How many of you were in chapel today? Okay. And how many of you are here tonight who are married, presently married? All right. I assume the rest of you are single. So I hope what I say will apply to both groups. Here's what I hope is going to happen tonight. For those of you that are married, I hope that your marriage will get better because we spent a few minutes together tonight. Would that be all right with you? Marriages either get better or they get worse. They never stand still. And I certainly hope your marriage will not get worse because I came. And for those of you that are single, I hope that your relationships will get better and not worse. My second desire is that you will learn some things that you will find so helpful that you will want to share them with your friends who are not here tonight, but who desperately need help. Do you know the people I'm talking about? And my third desire is that we can have a little fun while we do this. Now, I meet people who don't believe in fun. You talk about fun and they say, "Oh no, I'm a Christian." I do want to speak on the topic of 2 essentials to a long-term healthy marriage. Whether you're married or whether you're single, I think you'll find application to what I'm going to say. Maybe I should ask before I go any further if anyone here has ever lived in North Carolina where I live. Keep your hand up in case I need an interpreter. Ask these people, what did he say? All right. I believe the 2 essentials are, number one, that the individuals in that marriage must feel loved and appreciated if it's to be a long-term healthy marriage. Now, you can have a long-term marriage without this. We all know that there are thousands of couples who are married and been married for 20 and 30 years. They live in the same house, but they don't have a healthy marriage. They live as roommates in the same house, processing logistics, but they don't have anything near what the Bible calls becoming one flesh, deep, deep intimacy. They don't have that. If you're going to have that kind of marriage, you must feel loved and appreciated by your spouse. And so I want to talk just a bit about what is my most popular book, and that is The 5 Love Languages. Because here's the problem. I discovered this years ago, that what makes one person feel loved does not make another person feel loved. Never forget the first time I encountered this in my office. The couple came in. I found out later they'd been married to each other for 30 years. They sat down, and the wife began the conversation, and she said, "Dr. Chapman, I want you to know right up front that we don't have any money problems." I read in a book, she said, that money was the biggest problem in marriage, but not for us. We don't have any money problems. And I want you to know that we don't argue. We don't believe in arguing. And she went on with 2 or 3 more positive things, and I'm beginning to wonder, did they come in here to tell me what a good marriage they have? But then she started crying. She said, "But Dr. Chapman, the problem is I just don't feel any love coming from him." She said, "It's just like we're roommates living in the same house and I'm so empty." And she just went on and on and on and on. Well, when she finished, I looked over at him and he said, "I don't understand her. I do everything I know to show her that I love her. She sits there and says she doesn't feel loved." He said, "I don't know what else to do." I said, "Well, what do you do to show that you love her?" He said, "Well, I get home from work before she does, so I start the evening meal." He said, "Sometimes I have it ready. If not, she helps me, and we finish and we eat together." And he said, "After dinner, I wash the dishes." And he said, "On Thursday nights, I vacuum the floor." And he said, "Every Saturday I wash the car." And he said, "I walk the dog after I get through with the dishes every night." And he said, "I mow the grass every Saturday." He said, "I help her with the laundry." And he went on, and I was beginning to wonder, what does this woman do? It seemed to me like he was doing everything. And he said, I do all these things to show her that I love her, and she sits there and says she doesn't feel loved. He said, I don't know what else to do. Well, look back at her. She said, Dr. Chapman, he's right. He's a hard-working man. She said, but Dr. Chapman, we don't ever talk. We haven't talked in 30 years. Said he's always mowing the grass, washing the dishes up. You understand what's going on? A sincere husband who is loving his wife in the best way he knows how to express it, and a wife who's not getting it. And over the next 15 years, I heard that story over and over and over and over and over in my office. And I knew that there was a pattern to what I was hearing, but I didn't know what it was. So finally, I sat down and read 12 years of notes that I made when I was counseling people, and asked myself the question, when someone sat in my office and said, I feel like my spouse doesn't love me, what did they want? What were they complaining about? And their answers fell into 5 categories, and I later called them the 5 love languages. I wasn't dogmatic that there's only 5, but now that the book's been out for 20 years and sold over 8 million copies in English and been translated in 50 languages around the world, and no one has come back with a convincing 6th or 7th love language, I'm a little more dogmatic. People have said to me, Dr. Chapman, there's a 6th language. And I say, what? And they say, chocolate. And I say, well, if they bought it, it's a gift. If they made it, it's an act of service. And one guy did say a 6th love language is shopping. And I said, well, it sounds a lot like quality time to me. She wants you to be with her. So I want to just recap these briefly for you. If you've read the book, it'll be a review. If you haven't read the book, it'll be an introduction. Love language number 1 is words of affirmation, using words to affirm the other person. You look nice in that outfit. I really appreciate what you did. You can focus on the way they look, on the way they talk, on something they've done for you. You can focus on their personality, but you're using words to affirm them. 1 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 1, love edifies. Love builds up. So one way to build up a person is to give them words of encouragement. Now I meet people, like a lady some time ago said to me, she said, Gary, I know it would be good if I could give my husband some positive words. She said, but to be honest with you, I can't think of anything good to say about the man. And I said, well, does he ever take a shower? And she said, well, yes. I said, well, how often? She said, every day. I said, if I were you, I'd start there. I appreciate you taking a shower. There are men who don't. I have never met a man, never met a woman that you couldn't find something good to say about them. Proverbs chapter 28, verse 18. No, chapter 18, verse 21. Says, life and death are in the power of the tongue. You can kill your spouse or give them life by the way you talk to them. Same thing is true about your children. You see, ladies, when you give him a positive word, there's something inside of him that wants to be better. And when you give him a critical word, there's something inside of him that wants to shoot you. I remember when our children were little, my wife would tell our children what a great father I was. And I knew she was going beyond reality a lot of the times. But every time she told them how great I was, it made me want to be as good as she said I was. It's powerful to give your spouse, or anyone else for that matter, positive words. A second love language is gifts. Ephesians 5:25 says, husbands are to love their wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for it. In that illustration, Christ himself is the gift. The scriptures say that all good gifts come down from God. It's universal to give gifts as an expression of love. Now, the gift need not be expensive. Haven't we always said it's the thought that counts? But I remind you, it's not the thought left in your head that counts. It's the gift that came out of the thought in your head. You know, guys, You can get flowers free a good bit of the year. Just go out in your backyard and pick one. That's what you kids do. How many mothers have ever received a dandelion from your kids? Yeah. Now, guys, I'm not suggesting dandelions, okay? You don't have any flowers in your backyard? Your neighbor's yard. Ask them. They'll give you a flower. Or you could go to a funeral and ask the family. They'll give you a flower. I did that not long ago. I went to a funeral, and after the funeral, the church had a luncheon for the family, and I went to the luncheon, and I walked in, and I noticed they had these vases of red roses. So when I got ready to go, I just said to one of the ladies, I said, would you mind if I take one of those roses to my wife? She said, oh, Dr. Chapman, you can have this whole vase. I'll go home with 2 dozen red roses. I told her where I got them. She still liked them. You can pick up a stone in a city parking lot and take it home and give it to an 8-year-old boy and say, hey, man, I found this today. Look at the colors in here. I thought about you. I wanted you to have this. If gifts is his love language, when he's 23, you'll find it in his dresser drawer, and he'll remember the day you gave it to him. Gifts are powerful communicators, and for some people, they speak very deeply of love. Number 3 is acts of service. Acts of service. 1 John chapter 3, verse 18. Love not only in word, but in deed. Do something to show your love. Now, in a marriage, that is such things as cooking meals. Incidentally, anybody here still cook? A few of you. Yeah. My son came home. He didn't get married till he was 34. People would ask him, when are you going to get married? When are you going to get married? And he would say, when you grow up in the home of a marriage counselor, you're very careful. But at any rate, after he got married, he came home 6 months later and he said, Dad, I got a bonus when I married Amy. I said, really? He said, yeah, Dad, she likes to cook. He said, I never thought I'd find a girl in my generation that liked to cook. And then my daughter married a man that liked to cook, so my kids got it made. Washing dishes is an act of service. For those of you that are married, who washes dishes at your house? Yeah, okay, yeah. Vacuuming floors is an act of service. Yeah, for those of you that are single, answer these questions for your mom and daddy. You know, just looking back on your home, okay? Getting white spots off the mirror. Yeah. Cleaning the toilet. A lot of you, nobody's cleaning the toilet. Walking the dog. Mowing the grass. Washing the car. All those things that guy was doing I talked about a while ago. He was doing acts of service. Acts of service. And for some people, this is what communicates that you love them. Number 4 is spending quality time, by which I mean you give them your undivided attention. Mark chapter 3 and verse 14 says of Jesus that he ordained 12. We call them the 12 disciples. Now listen, that he might be with them. Jesus preached to multitudes, but he had 12 men that he gave quality time to. Now in a marriage, I'm not talking about sitting in the same room and the two of you watching television. Someone else has your attention. I'm talking about sitting in the same room on the couch with the TV off, looking at each other and talking. Those of you that are married, do you have couches? What do you do with those things? Have you ever tried this? Sitting on the couch with the TV off, looking at each other. It can be scary at first. And talking to each other. Or taking a walk down the road, just the two of you and talking. Or going out to eat, assuming you talk to each other. Have you ever noticed in a restaurant, you can almost always tell the difference between dating couples and married couples. Dating couples will look at each other and talk. Married couples sit there and you'd think they went there to eat. If I sit on the couch with my wife and give her 20 minutes looking, listening, interacting with her, I have given her 20 minutes of my life, and she has done the same for me. It's a powerful communicator when you give someone your undivided attention. Number 5 is physical touch. We've long known the emotional power of physical touch. That's why we pick up babies and hold them and kiss them and cuddle them. And long before the baby understands the meaning of the word love, the baby feels loved by physical touch. Now, in a marriage, I'm talking about such things as holding hands, kissing, embracing, the whole sexual part of the marriage, arm around the shoulder, driving down the road, you put your hand on their leg, sitting around the house and they walk by and you trip them. I'm kidding. As a matter of fact, if you're married, why don't you reach over right now and just touch each other? And all you singles, give an appropriate touch to somebody beside of you. Yeah, it's all right. Come on. You don't have to be married to touch. Yeah. Physical touch. Now listen to me carefully. Out of those 5 love languages, each of us, married or single, young or old, each of us has a primary love language. One of those 5 speaks more deeply to us emotionally than the other 4. Now, we can receive love in all 5, but if we had to give up one, we'd give up this one, or this one, or this one, but not this one. This is the one that really makes me feel love. It's very similar to spoken language. Every one of us grew up speaking a language with a dialect. I grew up speaking English, Southern style. But everyone grows up speaking a language with a dialect, and that's the one you understand best. The same thing is true with love. Now, once in a while, someone says to me, I don't know, Gary, I think 2 of those are just about equal for me. And my response is, fine, we'll give you 2 love languages. We'll call you bilingual. But most of us have a primary love language, a secondary love language, and then the other 3 fall in line under that. In a marriage, seldom does a husband and wife have the same love language. It happens, but not very often. And by nature, we speak our own language. So whatever makes me feel loved is what I'm going to do for my spouse. So let's say that words of affirmation is my language. And I don't know anything about love languages, but I get married. What am I going to do for my wife? I'm going to give her words of affirmation. I'm going to tell her how nice she looks. I'm going to tell her how much I appreciate what she did. I'll probably tell her 12 times a day, honey, I love you. I cannot tell you how much I love you. I love you so much. But let's say words is not her language. Let's say acts of service is her language. But I don't ever do anything to help her. It's just a matter of time. One night, she's going to say to me, you keep on saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. If you love me, why don't you help me? And I will be blown out of the saddle. Why? Because in my mind, I've been loving her. In her mind, if I loved her, I'd be helping her. I believe there are literally thousands of married couples who are loving each other, but they're not connecting with each other. And some of them have been like this for 20 and 30 years. And in their minds, they're loving the other person. But in the mind of the other person, they're not feeling loved. So the key is that we must learn to speak the language of the other person. Now someone says, Gary, okay, I get it. But what if the love language of the spouse is something that doesn't come natural for you? And my answer, so you learn it. My wife's language is acts of service. One of the things I do for her is vacuum the floors. Now, you don't know me well, but do you think that vacuuming floors comes natural for me? My mother made me vacuum, All through junior high and high school, I could not go play ball on Saturday until I vacuumed the house. In those days, I said to myself, if I ever get out of here, one thing I'm not going to do, I am not going to vacuum floors. You could not pay me enough to vacuum floors. There's only one reason I vacuum floors. L-O-V-E. You see, when it doesn't come natural, it's a greater expression of love. My wife knows every time I vacuum the floor, it's nothing but 100% pure, unadulterated love. And I get credit for the whole thing. We were sitting around the other night. My wife said, you know, honey, these blinds are getting dusty. I looked over at the blinds and I said, they are, aren't they, honey? That's all I said. But I heard the lady. I cataloged it. So 2 mornings later, it was a Friday morning. I was getting ready to leave later that day to go do a marriage seminar. It was about 6:30 on Friday morning. I was in there vacuuming those blinds. She stumbled in and said, honey, what are you doing? I said, honey, I'm making love. Big smile broke on her face, and she said, you have got to be the greatest husband in the world. Now, my love language is words of affirmation, so I said to her, tell me one more time, babe, how great am I? She told me again. I get on the plane with a full love tank, and she goes back to finish her nap with a full love tank. Why? I spoke her language, and she spoke my language. You understand why I would say that what I've just shared with you could literally save thousands of marriages. In fact, every Saturday when I lead seminars, I'll have at least half a dozen couples come up and say, Gary, we were that close to divorce, and somebody gave us a copy of your book. And it was like the lights came on. And we looked back over our marriage and realized how we had missed each other for years. And we took the test and figured out what our language is, and we tried it. And our whole marriage turned around. You see, because we so desperately need love, when you start getting it in the right language, you are emotionally drawn to that other person. Can emotional love be reborn in a marriage? You bet. You bet. It doesn't come with the passing of time. It comes with knowledge, and it comes with the willingness to do it. Now, I did meet one man who said to me, he said, I understand that love language stuff. He said, I understand that. He said, my wife's language is acts of service. And he said, but I'm just going to tell you right now, if it's going to take my washing dishes and vacuuming floors and doing the laundry, you can forget about that. And I said, well, that's your choice. If you want to live with a woman who has an empty love tank, that's your choice. I much prefer to live with a wife who has a full love tank. If washing dishes and vacuuming floors and doing the laundry is going to make my wife feel loved, I say bring on the laundry and give me the vacuum cleaner. It's a small price to pay to live with a happy woman. You see, the emotional need for love affects everything else in the marriage relationship. And incidentally, I won't talk about it now, but we can if you want to in the Q&A. The same principle applies to raising children. Every child has a primary love language. It's not enough for parents to be sincere. Almost all parents love their children, but not all children feel loved. So we have to learn how to love children. You know, it's been very interesting to me in Titus chapter 4, I think it is, where it says the older women are to teach the younger women to love their husbands and to love their children. You read that and ask, what? You have to have a class in learning to love your husband and your kids? I thought mothers just naturally love their children. What has to be learned, I believe, is how to express love in a way that's going to be meaningful to the child and meaningful to the adult. Okay? All right, let me stop there.